Again, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. My name is Christian Dawson. I'm co-founder of the Internet Infrastructure Coalition, and I also serve as board chair for the I2 Coalition. The I2 Coalition is made up of nearly 60 internet infrastructure companies. We've come together to help educate the public and policymakers about our positive economic impact and our efforts to provide high-quality, open, and free internet access. This event today, with knowledgeable speakers, tremendously informative exhibits right here on Capitol Hill, and distinguished members of the United States Congress will help us do just that. We are the people who build and maintain the internet, the nuts and bolts behind the scene that allows the internet to run. And we're one of the few things going right in this difficult economy. In the United States alone, the internet infrastructure industry generates $46 billion in annual revenue, and the industry is growing at a rate of nearly 20% annualized growth. That means a lot of jobs in a lot of places. As the world economy grows more and more virtual, it's vital for workers in our field to be on equal footing with competitors. We aim to provide policymakers with the facts they need to make informed decisions about how to best foster the internet infrastructure industry. The I2 Coalition's charter members include familiar names to some, like cPanel, Rackspace, SoftLayer, and Endurance International Group, represented here today. The Coalition, representing web hosting and data center providers, software and service delivery companies, cloud services, and registrars and registries, is also made up of dozens of smaller companies and startups employing people across America, including rural internet providers. We hope a unified voice for these companies, backed by sound research, will help develop positive public policies that will allow us to continue to drive the economy forward with a free, open, and accessible internet. Today, we'll hear remarks from Alexis Ohanian, Senator Ron Wyden, Senator Jerry Moran, and Congressman Darrell Issa, both on their way. The elected officials will also be receiving an award for their strong support of our efforts to promote and protect an open and free internet. We will now honor the first of our awardees today, Senator Ron Wyden, with our first annual Champion of Internet Innovation Awards. I've asked Alexis Ohanian to help present these awards. Alexis is an innovator and entrepreneur and is an example of the type of internet leader we're fighting for. Alexis, will you join me and get the award? So our first awardee is Senator Ron Wyden from Oregon. He is on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, Senate Committee on Finance, and chairman of the Subcommittee on International Trade, Customs, and Global Competitiveness. Our group came together because me and our co-founder, David Sneed, who's at the back of the room there, we were concerned about COICA, which was the precursor to SOPA and PIPA. And we went up and we talked to Senator Wyden and his staff, and we said, what can we do about this? And they said, get more of you together. And so we want to thank the senator for giving us that advice that brought us here today. And we want to thank the senator for fighting this award, for fighting for a free and open internet before we even showed up. So for doing that for us and for the internet, we want to thank you and give you our very first Innovator Award.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Christian asked me to talk for about an hour, so I didn't really like that. No. These two, you know that this is really a big day when Alexis is wearing a tie. I mean, this is not just your garden variety kind of discussion about tech, but this doesn't happen by osmosis. My friend Darrell Issa is here as well, and he's going to, I know, be getting an award. But let's give a big shout out, particularly to Alexis and Christian. They've done a wonderful job, not just in I2, but putting together our advocacy on all these key issues. Big shout out for Christian and Alexis. Thank you. And I so appreciate, I know Congressman Issa does too, and Senator Moran, we so appreciate your doing what we sought to do in the battle against PIPA and SOPA and so many of these causes is having you get out about the Hill and making sure that members of Congress, listen to you. And your trekking around the halls is not just important from the standpoint of Fitbit or something like that. This is important because it's so critical that you all are part of this educational effort in terms of folks on the Hill. And suffice to say, not everybody kind of comes from the industry like Darrell does. I mean, we're all kind of trying to take our knowledge and our background and apply it to some of these key kinds of questions. We've won some wonderful battles in the past. You know, we're particularly pleased, going back, and Darrell remembers this from his predecessor, Chris Cox, you know, our effort with Section 230, for example. If we hadn't been able to get that passed, you know, years ago, this is the Communications Decency Act, we might not have been able to encourage some of the investment in social media. So we've won some big ones in the past in the fight to derail PIPA and SOPA, but we've got some other critically important questions coming up. For example, in the next few months, big decisions are going to be made in the Senate and the House about whether we're going to be able to keep the net free of multiple and discriminatory taxes. Our economy is obviously in a challenging and fragile set of circumstances right now. The last thing we need are multiple and discriminatory taxes on a growing part of our economy. So when you're out and you're making your visits, and I note from the program you're going to be talking about that issue. We're going to be dealing with cybersecurity. We're going to be dealing with it in both the Senate and the House. And I want it understood. I serve on the Intelligence Committee. My older child calls it the so-called Intelligence Committee. That we are dealing with very real national security threats. There is no question that there is a real threat of cyber attacks. We must show, and particularly with your expertise and your savvy, we have to show that it is possible to deal with those real threats without sacrificing our privacy and our individual liberties. That these are not mutually exclusive objectives. We can protect our country in a dangerous time from these cyber attacks without sacrificing American liberties. So what it really comes down to, what Darrell and I and Senator Moran, and you have allies on both sides of the aisle, on this issue. What we have tried to say is that we are going to do everything we can from a policy standpoint to preserve a free and open internet, because that will allow for the kind of innovation that your terrific organization is all about. So thank you for being here. Thank you for the great work you've done in the past. And I'm honored to be one of your recipients. And we will display this. I can tell my staff thinks this is a photo opportunity. So we will display this, and just proud to be part of the effort to make the machinery of the federal government work so as to ensure the kind of innovation that you all have championed. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Our next award today goes to Chairman Darrell Issa of California. He is the chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee and a member of the House Judiciary Committee. When we were fighting PIPA and SOPA, we were new to this, and we were trying to figure out ways that we could interject our opinions and our perspectives on these sorts of things, and we were looking for outlets and resources to do that. And Chairman Issa gave us great tools like Madison. And so we want to thank him today for using the internet to save the internet.
You're wearing a tie, so we can do the photo op.
Ouch, Christian. I may be underdressed, but I'm actually overdressed for this industry.
Exactly. I note Michael Petricone is in the audience, so he remembers the days when our group at the Consumer Electronics Association, where we bet hundreds of thousands of dollars in Las Vegas on the future of our company, we were typically in matching polo shirts, bowling shirts, or something that had Viper all over it. So the fact is, appropriately dressed is all relative, and you look just marvelous. It really is a pleasure to still be connected to the real world. not just by the internet, but by the people who come to Washington. So that's really why it's always a pleasure to have an opportunity to say thank you for honoring me, but also thank you for the work you've done to keep myself and my staff informed. To voters, I say employed. But the reality is that America is so disconnected from its government. And Madison, you mentioned very kindly, Madison is where we're going to, through a nonprofit, because the government's too stodgy and stupid to do something like OpenGov in-house. We are going to continue pushing for the American people to have a direct voice. And I believe that's where everything you do, but also everything you believe in, can be defended. So I'm glad to see you physically here on the Hill, but I'm even happier that more and more people are realizing that they can be online instead of in line and still be heard. And that's what we're going to keep doing. Now, like most politicians, you always have something to sell. We're doing IT reform in the government. And I hope we succeed, and I hope that we do a better job. I hope we open the opportunity for greater use of open source. I hope we open the opportunity for better purchasing and for better opportunity for innovation. But I will tell you one thing, we're using Madison because we want everyone to tell us how we do a better job. And for everybody here, I need your help. The fact is, some of you do business with the government, some of you don't. Some of you wouldn't touch doing anything with the government for good reason. But the fact is, the government has to do a better job, and we're only going to do it when people who understand how you get to innovative solutions, how you stop having countless billions of dollars in programs that go on for anywhere from 2 to 15 years and then get announced a failure and the money gets written off. I made a comment the other day, and I'll close with this, which drove Microsoft crazy. But I just noted that if you take the amount we spend on COTS software, like Microsoft Exchange, or any number of other products, and then you look at what it costs to produce that initially, you realize we spend more every year than the original software budget was to create these innovative solutions. Now, I'm not suggesting that a government that can't even figure out how to buy well start making from scratch innovative products. What I'm saying is that we at least ought to be able, as the largest single purchaser, $81 billion a year worth of IT, we ought to be able to buy value so the American people get value. We also ought to be able to make sure that when we start down a road to be more efficient and more transparent through the investment in software, that at the end of it all, we are more efficient and more transparent rather than writing off yet another billion-dollar program or more. So it's a passion for me, as is internet freedom. And Ron Wyden, Senator Wyden left, but I remember Chris Cox and his constant fighting for internet freedom and to stop internet taxation, to stop something from being grabbed by the government quickly, or grabbed back in some ways from the government quickly, so as to take advantage of other people's innovation and then starve that innovation as a result. So thank you for being here, and thank you for your engagement under SOPA and PIPA, but also your engagement every day since. I appreciate it, and I'm really honored to have this award. Did I stay within the allotted time?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Chairman. Wonderful. Senator Jerry Moran is our third award recipient today. He will be here at 2 p.m., so don't go away after these prepared remarks. We've got a lot of interesting stuff going on until Senator Moran arrives. Now let me introduce Alexis Ohanian to say a few words about his vision of the internet and hopefully a little why he feels that the work of what we're doing is vital to the future of it. Alexis is a startup founder and an investor in Brooklyn, New York. After graduating from UVA in 2005, Alexis and his co-founder Steve Huffman started Reddit, one of the largest and most influential websites on the internet. Now a Reddit board member, Alexis focuses on social enterprise Red Pig, publishing authors like XKCD and SMBC, with profits donated to worthy causes. Alexis helped launch travel search website Hipmunk before joining the fight against SOPA and PIPA. Alexis invests in and advises over 50 tech startups. He's Y Combinator's ambassador to the East, co-founder of the nonprofit IHAS, and is writing a book, Without Your Permission. Along the way, Alexis spoke at TED, volunteered in Armenia as a Kiva Fellow, and was named on Forbes 30 Under 30 list 2 years in a row, and then he turned 30. So, Alexis.
Thank you, Christian. Very kind introduction. I have an Evernote here, of course, with notes for my remarks. I want to point out the very first time that I got involved in DC was a meeting with Christian, and I hope my editor doesn't cut this because you get a shout out in the book. Because I have always thought of myself first as a startup guy. I had the good fortune of being in the first round of Y Combinator immediately after Steve and I graduated from UVA. And we moved up to Medford, Massachusetts to start Reddit in a tiny rented apartment with $12,000, which was basically enough money for us to live for 3 months like college students. We played a lot of World of Warcraft. In fact, that was the only real world we saw was Azeroth for those 3 months. We both hit level 60, and we also launched, that was the level cap back then, and we launched Reddit. My story, the story that I got to tell along with Christian in November of, 2 years ago when we were in the midst of what seemed then to be an unwinnable war against Soap and Pippa, my story of entrepreneurship could not have happened without standing on the shoulders of giants, of all the people who make it possible for two founders in an apartment in Medford, Massachusetts with laptops and an internet connection to start a company that could one day be one of the most trafficked websites in the world. Right? That story does not happen in a world without an open internet, without a sound infrastructure, without the open source software that makes it so cheap to create that innovation, and most importantly, without anything to get in the way of that wonderful thing we call creativity. You know, there's a meme we talk about called permissionless innovation on the internet, and it's what lets people take chances, whether they're startup founders or whether they're artists trying their first Kickstarter campaign. That's the spirit of what we bring. And as you may have heard from my story, no offense to the Silicon Valley crowd, I didn't do any of this stuff in Silicon Valley. Medford, Massachusetts, Charlottesville, Virginia. I live in Brooklyn right now. And one of the things that frustrated me so much about the fight against Soap and Pippa was that the meme, the headline, often read, Silicon Valley versus Hollywood. Well, they got the Hollywood part right. The problem was it was Hollywood versus all of America. Right? We saw the outpouring of support from millions of people all over the country saying no to their representatives and their senators who supported those terrible bills. And so we thought, all right, it's one thing to talk about how this is a myth. It's another thing to show it. And I'm a doer. I want to do this kind of stuff. So I had a conversation with Eric Martin, who's our general manager at Reddit, over burgers and shakes, where most good ideas come from. And he said, why don't we just take a bus? This was the middle of campaign season for the 2012 election. Why don't we just take a bus? We'll crowdfund it on the internet and ride it all across the heartland of America. Because the first debate is happening in Denver, Colorado. And the first VP debate, or the only VP debate, was happening in Danville, Kentucky. We could draw an interesting map. We've got about 9 days. Like, why not? And so, like a lot of crazy ideas over burgers and shakes, we did it. And for about 9 days, very internet style, we saw journalists board this bus and be willing to ride around with us with very little plan for a week and change, documenting the people we met, documenting the founders who were rebuilding derelict downtowns into startup hubs, talking to the farmers like Tom Parker, who has a family farm in Richmond, Missouri, who by his own admission, and this was after serving us the best breakfast I've ever had because I got to meet the chickens that laid the eggs that we were eating. For some reason, I did not meet the pigs that provide the sausage. I don't know. I never found out why, but Tom's a family farmer, and like most family farmers in this country, he works his tail off just to keep that farm going. But agriculture is a fundamental part of this economy, and it's one of the oldest industries in America. Not the tight jean wearing hipster I'm used to dealing with in Brooklyn talking about the next big thing on the internet, right? We started talking to Tom about how much the net meant to him, and how much internet freedom meant to him. And he said, I only check my email 3 times a week. I'm not sitting there on my smartphone just playing Angry Birds. Like, I've got real Angry Birds to deal with every day, right? But over 90% of my orders now come through the internet, and I couldn't imagine running this family farm without it. And I'm looking at him, and I'm just like, this is it. This was that moment when I realized just how important this was. The middle of like Richmond, Missouri, rural Missouri, here is this farmer telling me what a difference the internet has made. And the reason that was made better was because of a startup in Kansas City called Ag Local. All right, again, I still haven't mentioned Silicon Valley. I still haven't mentioned that idea that all of that innovation and all of that love of internet freedom is limited to a particular zip code. No, no, no. And when I saw that, and when I saw him talking to the founder of Ag Local, Nate, I realized that this platform had tremendous potential. And that was why we brought these reporters. That was why we shot a documentary called Silicon Prairie, which will be debuting publicly soon. We had a wonderful screening actually here in DC. But the reason why we were doing all this was because every district in America is a digital district. It's not just the tech hubs we used to think of, it's everywhere. And Americans all over this country care about this issue and actually really understand how important it is. So I want to make sure everyone in Washington gets this message, okay? And if we believe that this is the next great revolution, we know what the Industrial Revolution did to the world, right? We know what kind of progress it brought. To play in the Industrial Revolution, you needed to open a factory, right? Today, to play in the software revolution, you need to only open a laptop. And that is a transformative idea that I think more and more people are starting to realize because it's creating jobs, it's creating innovation, and it's getting this country back on its feet. So thank you for everything you do. Christian, thank you so much for everything. And yeah, go internet.
Really appreciate that, Alexis. And yes, when Silicon Prairie comes out, everybody needs to see it because it's a great example of why it is we're fighting the fight that we're fighting. We're going to be doing our best to try and put the word out about that and finding ways to possibly do screenings ourselves, so that you definitely need to have an eye out for that. In closing, before we go to our demo stations, I want to thank a few people. I want to thank Senators Wyden and Congressman Issa, and thank Senator Moran, who is on his way. I also want to thank CEA for being an event sponsor this afternoon. CEA understands that the future of consumer electronics are internet-connected consumer electronics, and we're proud to call them partners. I want to thank the I2 Coalition Board for coming out and joining us here today, and I want to thank all of our members who have traveled here from all around the United States to come be a part of this event today and teach Congress how the internet works. The demonstrators have put a lot of hard work into carving up the internet into 15 really digestible chunks. And if you go around the room after I'm finished talking and learn from each of these individuals at these individual stations, you're going to get a great amount of perspective on how the internet really works. So we're happy to be here as educators for that. We want to also thank all of you for coming. Ultimately, today's event is an education event, not a policy event. We came together on SOPA and PIPA because we saw on a boots-on-the-ground level what it had the potential to do to the internet. We do have policy goals, and they're to bring that same operational clarity to future issues such as CISPA, ECPA reform, and CFAA reform. But today is all about learning. So please take the time to check out the demonstrations we have around the room, and remember that Senator Moran will be here at 2 o'clock p.m. Thank you. I actually wanted to ask if Alexis would be joined by our friend Micah Schaefer, if they could both help me in presenting this award today. If you guys are willing to come up. We want to make this as awkward as possible. If you guys would come up and help me here. And there's a specific reason why I'm asking these two guys to come up with me, and that's because we all met Senator Jerry Moran from Kansas together on one specific fateful day that I'd like to talk a little bit about. First of all, our award recipient is Senator Jerry Moran from Kansas. He is on the Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee and the Appropriations Committee. And when we started going up to Capitol Hill to talk about what we saw as the problems that SOPA and PIPA were going to bring to our industry, I met Micah and Alexis the very first day that we all went up together to start beating on the doors of senators and congressmen's offices to tell them what we saw happening to the internet if we didn't change their minds about certain things. We had one particular meeting with Senator Jerry Moran. At that time, the only person that was standing in the way of PIPA becoming law was earlier award recipient Senator Ron Wyden. And when we had talked to him, he said, we need people to join us in the hold. We need people to join us in this fight. Senator Jerry Moran sat with us and talked with us extensively and listened to us talk about what this was going to do to our industry, asked a number of extremely intelligent questions. And the day after we had our meeting, joined Senator Wyden in the hold on PIPA. And we saw that as a watershed moment in the fight against SOPA and PIPA. All of a sudden, it was a issue that I think Senator Moran had actually originally been a sponsor of the bill and had taken his name off the bill, had the courage to come full circle and take new information, new knowledge, and the information that we were presenting and others were presenting, and say, well, I'm changing my mind, and I am going to fight to make sure that that PIPA is not made into law. So we want to thank him for doing what it is we're looking for all members of Congress to do, to learn about how the internet works, to learn about how important our industry is and how it needs to be protected. And we want to provide him with this award for engaging with us and helping us fight for internet freedom. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Very nice of you. Thank you. Glad to see you. Thank you.
Can we get one picture, guys, real quickly? It's sort of a reunion of that fateful day. Thanks so much. I do appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Christian. Thanks. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you all very much for allowing me to be here and listening to Christian tell the story. It was a very important day, valuable day to me. And in fact, in many ways, from that point on, became much more interested in the topics that you care so much about. I think it's surprising to me, if we have two daughters, my wife and I have two daughters, 22 and 24, if you ever told them that their father was involved in technology, the internet, the latest kind of developments in applications, they would think that's not my dad. And my guess is there's always some kind of stereotype. As a senator from Kansas, my guess is that there's this sense that technology is something in Silicon Valley and maybe Austin and Boston and New York. And boy, I just see great potential for the prairie to have success when it comes to innovation and the opportunities that the internet now provides. And I appreciate Christian and his colleagues coming to the office and educating me. It is evidence that there is value to you being here. I'm always hopeful that whoever comes to Washington, D.C., it's easy to become disillusioned and occasionally cynical about the nature of politics and the development of policy in Washington, D.C. But I hope that that story that Christian told is evidence that there are opportunities, that when the facts are presented, when evidence is told, when anecdotes are related, that there are many, if not all or most members of Congress, House and Senate, Republican and Democrat, who are interested in knowing what the right policy is for the benefit of the country. And sometimes you have to hit us over the head for us to recognize that. But if you're willing to do that, we are willing to learn and to adjust accordingly. So thank you for bringing your stories to Washington, D.C. Thank you for caring enough about the future of the internet and what it can do for our country to talk to members of Congress and their staffs. And so I'm grateful to receive the award, but I'm mostly here to tell you that I'm grateful for your presence in our nation's capital to deal with people like me who don't necessarily understand the latest technologies, but when explained to me, can get a pretty good feel and a pretty good understanding of what is important and what matters. I got interested in these issues in large part because I'm one who believes that we're spending our futures away. We've spent too much money, the deficit matters, and I was disillusioned, dissatisfied with the nature of our political process in which Republicans, Democrats, the White House, and the Congress can't work together, and we don't seem to get anything done. And it occurred to me that maybe another way to address the deficit is to have growing economy and that puts people to work. And then you started looking at how do we grow the economy, and the internet and technology became the real evidence of where growth can occur. And Senator Wyden, who is very deserving of any recognition that you give him, was very capable in his outreach to me. He really was looking for a Republican that could be helpful in regard to his crusade. And we sat on the Senate floor one afternoon, and again, evidence that Republicans and Democrats do and can talk to each other, and had the conversation. We developed a level of trust in each other and became crusaders together. And we followed that up with Senator Mark Warner, a Democrat from Virginia. We're now, one of the things that we learned when I say about growing the economy, we have a great opportunity to do that if we can recreate the environment in which innovation, entrepreneurship, startup companies can succeed in America. And so the Kauffman Foundation in Kansas City on entrepreneurship issued a report about 2 years ago about what entrepreneurship can mean to the economy, gave some specific policy recommendations. And so we became interested in growing the economy to help solve the country's fiscal problems, and found a policy think tank that could give us the outline of things to do. And then we started looking for a Democrat partner, and Mark Warner of Virginia became that, and we introduced something called the Startup Act, which became Startup 2.0, and which just a few weeks ago became Startup 3.0. And if you can help us advocate for the policies that are contained in this legislation, we would be very grateful. And it's things like a tax code that encourages the ability to retain capital and to encourage people to invest in startup companies, a regulatory environment that says the regulations ought not cost more than the benefits that come from those regulations. As you know, those of you who have started a business, who know about entrepreneurs, that the barriers to starting a company, fixed costs matter. What is it? How much money can you raise, and how much can you retain to grow a company? The third thing is to take the research that we have, that's government funded, taxpayer funded, and quickly as possible get it in a position which it can be commercialized and people across the country can take advantage of it. And one that's very front and center right now in discussions in Washington, D.C. is about, in a sense, immigration, in our case, visas. Visas for people who have degrees in engineering and science and technology, but also, and this is certainly unique to our legislation, visas that encourage people who are foreign-born but in the United States to start companies, that they have the ability to take their ideas to market, and they can actually live here long enough to garner people who will invest in their business and create jobs for Americans. And so we're really out and about trying to see if we can't innovate our country back to prosperity. And the ultimate goal, from my perspective, is to make sure that the American dream is lived in America, and that people who have ideas like you have the ability to pursue those ideas, and in the process of your success, all Americans share in that success. And so thank you for sharing your skills and your talent with us in Washington, D.C. Thank you for being the kind of people who you are, that care about our country, but who also have the mindset to develop something that's very important, and to make sure that technology is used in a way that's advantageous not only to the economy, but to the American citizen, to the consumer. And we'll work hard here to see if we can't have the policies that we put in place that continue to allow the internet to be a viable infrastructure for our country's economy, including issues related to privacy and security, issues related to taxation, and again, just grateful for the chance to be here and to tell you thanks. You're a difficult audience for me. I don't know mostly what you talk about, and so you're very intimidating, but thanks for being a voice for something that really does matter to the future of our country and creates the opportunity for success for all Americans in the future. Honored to be with you, and I'm grateful for the recognition. Thank you. We'd love to have the innovation on the prairie. While I've been to CES and I've been to South by Southwest, I've been to Silicon Valley, one of the great things about the internet is that success can be had any place in the country. You don't have to be in one of those places, although I would guess some of you are. We'd love to have you on the prairie with the internet and innovation. And this means good things for all of America, not just little pockets. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you much. Thank you so much, Senator Moran. I really appreciate your comments. And this concludes our program today. I want to thank you all